What I'm going to talk to you about today is how to prepare a portfolio to accompany your application. Well, one of the questions, though, that we get a lot is what the portfolio is used for. Because actually at SCAD, we're one of the few art schools that do not require a portfolio. And some of our prospective students are kind of confused by that. They're like, why don't you require one? And the reason is that we want to give everybody an opportunity to study at SCAD. Like, for example, one of our programs, we have a whole program in game design. Several of our students that end up majoring in that, in high school, they thought they wanted to be engineers. So they didn't take art classes, but they still came to SCAD and were very, very successful. And so like I said before, we just want to give everybody an opportunity, but that doesn't mean, though, that we have a low expectation for our students, because even though the students come in without a portfolio, our expectations, they have to catch up very, very quickly. And so they in their first year, they really transform what they do. And so for our portfolio, what we use it for is to award students scholarships. And even though it's not a requirement, a vast majority of our students actually do submit a portfolio. And so our portfolio for our undergrads, we ask for 10 to 20 works in the portfolio, okay? And they don't have to be discipline specific, meaning it doesn't have to be in what your major is. For example, you want to study fashion design, and you want to study fashion design. We don't expect you to be a fashion designer yet. What we're looking for in the portfolio are examples, whether they're two-dimensional or three-dimensional, that show your basic sensibilities to art and design. Like I was doing a very similar presentation like this years ago, and a student who I was talking to, she wanted to be a photographer. And she came to a counseling session like this with a big stack of photographs. But she had never had a photography class before. And they weren't very good, because nobody had taught her that yet. But she thought since she wanted to study photography, she needed to have photographs. And so I was looking through the photographs, and not very good. And so I saw in her bag, she had images of ceramic pieces that she made. In those images, they were ceramic works, where there were these beautiful vases that she had thrown on a wheel, or things that were hand-built that she had carved into, where they were really beautiful, because in her high school, she had one teacher, and her teacher was a ceramic artist. And so that's all she ever learned. But they were these really beautiful examples that showed us that she understood what a beautiful line was, or a shape, or a texture, or a color, or a space. And so that those basic skills were there that we could then direct and have her apply those skills in photography. So for undergrads, it doesn't have to be discipline specific, but for graduate students interested in graduate school, those do have to be in the discipline that you're studying. And so, like I said, we want 10 to 20 works, and 10 is the minimum. And so after you do the 10, make sure that everything you add is adding value, or it's adding to the quality of the portfolio. Because I've seen some portfolios that have had 15 really good pieces in them, but they thought they had to have 20, and so they put 5 in that were not as good, and it really can undermine the confidence that the reviewer will have in the portfolio. When you submit the portfolio, you do it all online. We do it through a website called slideroom.com. So how many of you have applied already to SCAD? With the portfolio, and I'm going to talk to you all individually about your work, that once you apply, you're going to get a notification that in April, we're having here in Seoul what's called an expedited decision day. So before that day, you'll apply online, and then you'll upload your portfolio. And then on that day, you'll bring the rest of your documents with you, like your high school transcripts and anything else that we need. And on that day, they will tell you, one, if you've been accepted or not, and then they will also give you the results of your scholarship review. So for those of you who haven't applied, you can actually complete the application before you have everything else ready. You can go ahead and get that filled out by just going to the website, and you just click on this link right here, and the first part of the application takes 10 minutes to complete, because that first part of the application is just getting your basic information, your contact information, where you went to high school, so that way we can set up your file, and then when we get the rest of the support materials, we can get it organized, okay? What I'd like to do is, before I start meeting with you individually to look at your work, do any of you have any questions before I go any further? Actually, in our survey from our students who graduated in 2014, within 6 months of graduation, 97% of our students either got a job, or, are working, or went on to graduate school. And one of the reasons why our students are so successful is that starting in their first year, we try to connect our students with professionals in their industry. So starting in the very first year, we get our students connected to people that work in their industries. We do multiple projects every quarter with external partners. I mean, just this past year, we've done projects with the Cartoon Network, Porsche, BMW, Google. I'm trying to think of ones that you would know, because there's a lot of local ones as well. Gosh, who else? Chick-fil-A, have you heard of Chick-fil-A? We did a project with them, Coca-Cola. We've done and so our students are doing all sorts of real life problem solving in the classroom, and a lot of these opportunities, when we partner with these external partners, they lead to internships, and a lot of times those internships will lead to jobs. But I have to be honest, I don't like to use the word job very much, because like for some of our students, like if they're studying painting or if they're studying sculpture, they don't necessarily get a job as a painter or a sculptor. But what they're doing is they are still very successful as an exhibiting artist. Or students that are studying maybe jewelry design or studying fashion, they don't get a job doing that. They actually start their own companies or their own labels or their own design houses. Anybody else have a question? Yes. Actually very easy. Because the curriculum at one location is exactly the same at all of the locations. And so we actually, not only is it easy to do, we actually encourage our students to go to multiple locations. Because exactly, that's why we encourage them to go to these locations, because it's the world is so much smaller now. They need to know how to interact in an international community. And so we want to make sure that as a student, they start to get that international experience. unlike you, a lot of the students from the United States have not traveled outside of the United States until they go to college. I have one of my interior design students who finished 3 years in Atlanta. She's doing an internship in SCAD Hong Kong right now. Or I had a student who, while they were in Savannah, they were majoring in animation. They came to Atlanta to work for, started in Savannah for 3 years, and then in their 4th year came to Atlanta to do internships at the Cartoon Network and at Adult Swim, which are 2 different animation. And all of our locations have very diverse populations, especially, for example, our Atlanta campus. Our international student population is about 20% of the school. And so our students come from all over the world, which we feel is one of our strengths. Other questions? It is. You don't have to declare your major until the end of your 1st year. Okay, and so in the 1st year, all of our majors take a very similar sequence of classes that include drawing, 2D design, 3D design, color theory, where you're kind of getting the basics in that 1st year. And then you move into your major. But we've had students that will start in one degree program and then discover something new and then change. There's enough it depends on when you change, but there's enough electives that if you do it early on, what you took in your 1st major will become an elective class for your new major. Does that make sense? There's a small number of our programs that are only at one location. Jewelry is one that's just in Savannah. Industrial design is just in Savannah, but in Atlanta, we have printmaking and sculpture, which is just in Atlanta, as well as television producing is just, so it depends. Most of our programs are everywhere, but there's a few from just the language standpoint. In all of our campuses, we have what's called a writing center, where we have tutors and staff people that help students with their written communication skills. But in addition to that, for all of our disciplines, we have what are called a learning assistance center, where we offer tutoring, and we also offer additional workshops for students that find any kind of an obstacle with any class. It could be, like, for example, students that maybe are taking drawing, they might have a tough time understanding linear perspective. We do extra workshops in linear perspective, or we have tutors that meet with students outside of class time. And all of those services are included in tuition. So it doesn't cost students anything extra for that. And so we really always tell students that, ask for help, because we all need help every once in a while. We were asking about the assistance programs, and the reason we have those in place is that we are 100% invested in our students being successful. And we don't do the work for them, but we provide them as much support as we possibly can so that they are successful. Because we hold them to, one, a very high standard, and 2, we realize that these industries that they're going into are highly competitive. And that's why our students compete so successfully. That's what's different about SCAD is that when a student applies, we look at everybody as an individual, meaning that there's not like a test score, or it's not a number. We're really looking at the students, how they demonstrate that they can be successful at SCAD. And so that might be if a student doesn't feel that confident in their high school record, that's when the portfolio can help sway that decision into a positive direction. So we look at everything together. You know, also students, when they apply, they submit a resume. We've had students, before they've even gone to college, have started their own businesses, that they've, you know, worked with designers before, that they're really accomplished, where we see some sort of indicator there that tells us that they're going to be successful once they get the art and design education at SCAD. Absolutely. Or even some of the work you did in fashion. That's okay too. Even, again, for the undergrad, if it's not directly connected to this one, that's okay. You know, because on some of the fashion designs, we can still see some basic drawing skills. We can still see your design skills that then later you'll be able to apply to the jewelry design. You mean it's for them to get accepted or for them to get a credit for a class? So for each, there's certain classes that we look at just what a basic grade was, like for our drawing one class. If you got a C or better, we accept that credit. C or better. But so first off, you have to have the grade of a C or better. But for our studio classes, in addition to the transcript, to get credit for that, like an art and design class, we actually have to see work that was generated from that class. And that's also the benefit of applying, because once you complete this, you get an admission advisor. And so that's one person that works directly with you. And so they then take that kind of unique situation that you're in, and then they help guide you through that process. And so again, it's one person who actually becomes your own personal advisor to kind of help you through this process.
How many Asians or what's the rate of Korean students are getting hired after they graduate?
I don't know that specific statistic right now. I mean, I can find that out for you.
Okay.
I can find it because we have a whole office or a department. It's career and alumni success, and so we have a whole group of staff people that work with current students to kind of help them get that internship and then help them get those jobs. But then even after they graduate, they still stay in contact with them as alumni, and they keep all of those statistics. And for example, like interior design, in Atlanta, we have more requests for interns than we can supply. And especially in Atlanta, there's so many national and international companies have facilities there. You know, Steelcase, Perkins and Wills. I saw just kind of through here all the different interior and furniture shops that are all through here. They're all located in Atlanta. And so that's a lot of the connections that we have.
How many students are getting into fashion industry? I mean, what's the rate? Is it an intern or what kind of companies, fashion companies?
Spanx is located, have you heard of Spanx? SPA, they're located in Atlanta. Kate Spade, but a lot of our students actually end up starting their own labels. That catalog is upstairs. That catalog, it has a list of all sorts of companies. I mean, Atlanta is a major cosmopolitan area now. There's art museums there. We have our own SCAD Museum of Fashion Design now. And so we just had a big exhibition of Oscar de la Renta's work there. We now have an exhibition of Daniel Lismore. I don't know if you know who he is. He's a British designer. His exhibition in Atlanta was just ranked in London as the second most important fashion exhibition of this year. And it's the only place that it's showing in the United States. Still, I mean, even though it's not New York City, it has a huge fashion industry that a lot of companies, even though they might be based in New York, there's a lot of designers that are based in Atlanta. If they're based in New York, they have outlets in Atlanta. Atlanta is a huge market, a huge international market that more and more the geographic restrictions are not there. Meaning you don't have to be in New York, or you don't have to be in London, or you don't have to be in Paris. In the United States, our fashion program was just ranked #1. And we're not in New York. Okay, the world's gotten so much bigger now. And we've just opened up a museum of fashion and film. It's called SCAD Fash, and that's in Atlanta. And that's what his fashions, they're phenomenal. This is their article that they just did on January 21st. They came to Atlanta to cover our museum. This is the Vogue article. Even though it's Atlanta, the world's coming to look at this. And this is just the starting of the program. Well, and it's industries like that that have opportunities for our students, not just in film, but like, for example, they hire our fashion students to be costume designers. They hire our interior design students. They hire our animators, our graphic designers. There's so many, even though what we see is on the screen, there's so many other disciplines that go into making those things. And all of our students, they love hiring our SCAD students. There might be, depending on what the TOEFL score is, we also have an ESL program. And so based on the TOEFL score, you might get placed into our ESL that will then help you get into the studio classes. Is that what she's asking? Yeah. We offer 6 different levels of ESL. And so depending on what your score is, you get placed into there's either a score you get where you're able to take our regular classes, or you get put into a level of ESL. All right, but it's one of the things though that I want you to understand with the TOEFL scores and the ESL is that the reason we are very rigid about having a certain score is we want to make sure that when you're in the classrooms, you're understanding the instruction. And you're able to kind of participate, because if you don't fully understand it, the language, you're not going to fully understand the content. One of the reasons why our students are so successful is that not only do they create these really beautiful things visually, but they also have very strong skills where they can articulate what it is they created and how they created it. They can really explain it to people, which is one of the reasons why we hear that 97% of our students are having careers. We have had students who they will come to Atlanta to do an internship, but then also, even though the major classes aren't offered there, there's other kind of general education and foundation study classes and elective classes that students can take there. And so what you can do is, like a lot of our students, international, so if somebody comes in, wants to study jewelry design, they've come to Atlanta and did their first year in Atlanta, and then they'll go to Savannah for the next 2 years. And then in their last year, if they want to do an internship, they will save maybe like a history class or an elective class. And so when they come back to Atlanta for that 1 quarter to do the internship, they can also take one of those other classes while they're in Atlanta. We have students that will travel. We'll have students that will go to Los Angeles to do an internship, or Chicago to do an internship. You can do them just about anyway. With an international student though, for their visa, to maintain their visa, they have to do the internship as a class. And we offer that. We do internships for credit. And that's how international students are able to do internships in the United States. It's really what the student wants it to be. Meaning we have some students whose designs go kind of down. Well, I guess we really push the personal. So it's more of it's an individual student voice than it is going into manufacturing or something expected. You know, what we really try to do in all of our art and design programs, especially fashion, is we don't want students creating what they think fashion is supposed to be. We want them to create what fashion can be. We want them to discover new things. We want them to be the design leaders, not the design followers. And so we really push. I mean, sure, it has to be functional. It has to be wearable. Have you seen the fashion show?
Some students, yeah.
Okay, because we can, view the fashion show online. You'll see the range of stuff that our students create. But still, good design is good design. And that's what the industry sees, is that even though someone's designs might be highly personal, they can still fit into a lot of different genres. I mean, any design program is like that. You have to understand who you're designing for. Whether it's interior design, you don't just design an interior design space based on what your personal aesthetic is. You really understand the client and what their needs are, and you bring your aesthetic to still fulfill that need. Fashion design is the same way. Even though you have your own aesthetic, you have to understand who you're designing for. Like when we had that exhibition when Oscar de la Renta, you know, he designed every single one of his garments for a specific person. And he prided himself on getting to know that individual, so that each garment, even though visually it was connected to him and what he creates, each one of his garments had something very personal about the person that it was designed for. And so having that ability to not only create your own vision, but then also to share that vision with others who are going to be utilizing or wearing or living in or whatever, however that design is going to be applied to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, Oscar de la Renta, he was, I think he was from Venezuela originally. He's, he's designed for, do you guys know a singer named Taylor Swift? That's her gown right there. These are all images from the exhibition that he created. The singer Beyonce, this is her garment right here. Sarah Jessica Parker, this is her garment right up here. Oprah Winfrey, that's her garment right there. He passed away a couple of years ago, but yeah, so this is the gown right here. And this is him originally, but these are all of the Oscar de la Renta garments that he had. And so each one of these, even though there's a connection that they all have, each one was designed for a certain person in mind. You know, as early in like 1961, he was highly influenced by Coco Chanel. And so he has that very strong European kind of history and heritage that he then translated into a when he started working more in the United States, into a little bit more of a contemporary. So these are all So this is what our museum, so what our students do is not only do they walk through the museum, but they also get to go in. We have what is called it's kind of a research lab where we have about 1,500 famous garments. And so if our students who are studying want to see a Chanel garment or an Oscar de la Renta garment or, oh shoot, I mean, just you name it, important designer, they can actually request that that garment come out. They have to put white gloves on, but then they actually get to see how it was constructed. They get to do it kind of hands-on, which is phenomenal to have a library like that.